Hi, my name is Craig Simon with the Malden Church of Christ. I'm here with Dad again this week.
I'm Darrell Simon. It's really good to have everybody with us.
And next week, you won't be here. I'll be doing this by myself.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you will. All right.
So they're going to be on vacation.
You can talk with yourself back and
About a
forth.
week. Yeah, I'll talk with myself back and forth. Anyway, we want to do a sermon recap again this week, just like we did last week. We're going to consider God as the creative force behind all things. We spent most of our time in Genesis chapter 1. My lesson was God creates the universe, or God and his creation. Yeah. And then Dad's lesson was Christ in creation. Yeah. Before we get into our lessons, I would like to invite you, those of you who are watching online who may be interested in a Bible study, we have a correspondence course that we're offering through World Bible School. And so if you would like to be involved in that, send us an email at maldenchristians@gmail.com. That's maldenchristians@gmail.com. And then World Bible School also has Bibles. And so if you are looking for a Bible, we would be happy to send you one of these World Bible School Bibles that has the study notes in the back. Basically, the entire correspondence course is in the notes in the back as well.
That's a really great Bible there.
Yeah, it's a good resource. Our church we gave out 74 of these at the school supply giveaway back in August.
Yeah.
And so if you like a free Bible, we'd like to send you a World Bible School Study Bible. And if you would like a correspondence course, we'd like to send you one of those as well. So let's dive into the AM lesson. So in the AM lesson, I basically started with words matter. Mm-hmm. And Dad, what stands out to you the most about God's words in Genesis chapter 1?
Well, when we were going through that text, you were going through that text, and I think I had a lesson too that was a little bit similar to that some time back, where we looked at where then God said.
Yeah.
How many times, and that God said things that were good. So we had some positive words there for sure.
Yeah. So then God said, and at the end of each of those sections it says, and it was so.
Yeah.
Right? So we talked about, I kind of started with the importance of considering how we use our words, that God used his words to do good things and perfect things, right?
Yeah.
Like James alludes to in James chapter 1 and verse 17, that every good and every perfect gift. So that's the way that God used his words. And the challenge for us there, I think, when we look at Genesis chapter 1, it makes me think that God in so few words, right, let there be light, was the very first thing that's...
And speaking all of it into creation with his words too, Yeah. God's words are true. I mean, when he says God said, then, and it was so.
That's right.
It came about.
That's right. So I think there's a lesson there for us with our words, that we need to consider our words as well, and do positive things with our words as God did from the very beginning.
Yeah, that was a great point. And then, you made that a couple of times in the lesson. I thought that was really good to remind us how important our words are.
Yeah, that's right. But, for me, when I read that in Genesis chapter 1, then God said, then God said, then God said, it makes me really think about me, what I'm doing with my words. Mm-hmm. And so after that, we talked about the narrative of Genesis chapter 1, especially Genesis 1 through 11. And I'll either post a supplemental video either this week or next week, where a Hebraist, a scholar of the Hebrew language, emphasizes that what we read in Genesis 1 and 2, really 1 through 11, is narrative. It's not myth. It's not fairy tale. Mm-hmm. It's not written like once upon a time in a land far, far away, right? It's written in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the form of Genesis 1 through 11 is narrative. And we talked about God's plot. In narrative, there's a plot. There are scenes in narrative. You have the scene of creation overall in chapter 1. You have the scene of man being created and placed in the garden in Genesis chapter 2. You have the scene of the temptation and the fall of man in Genesis chapter 3. But you also have characters or individuals that make up the content. And the chief character in chapter 1 is God, right?
Right. That's right. God's the chief character there, and again, God's words. It's kind of interesting too. You made the point about them hearing God through coming in the garden,
Yeah.
walking through the garden, so like the swish or whatever it was.
Yeah, whatever the sound
something
was.
they heard, definitely.
Yeah, they knew that God was there.
Yeah.
So anyway, we see God's plot through the narrative account in Genesis 1. We see God's power, right, speaking everything into existence. One of the verses I looked at a couple of it was 2 Sundays ago, and I've always liked this verse, right? We think about everything that God made. Genesis 1:16. Then God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, right? We call that the sun, the lesser light to rule the night. And Hebrew basically says the stars also. So you have it's basically a compound word in Hebrew, the stars also. It's just like, oh, by the way, God made the stars.
Yeah.
God made all this other stuff, and the sun and the moon and the planets,
Right.
and the stars also. Just
Yeah.
kind of nonchalant,
Yeah,
like
and that was kind of a big deal, but it's like, and the stars also.
yeah.
Yeah.
But where we live, we go outside and we look up, and we can see. I've never tried to count them, but we can see out where we live. We can see a lot of stars,
Yeah.
right? Because we're out in the country.
Right.
We don't have a lot of light pollution, other than my shop light, which I can turn off and on. You guys don't have really any light pollution.
No.
Over at your property, so we can control that. Just about every night, I can go out on the sidewalk and look up and see the Milky Way, right? And so the creation from Romans chapter 1 and verse 20, right, that God's invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even His eternal power and Godhead or deity. So one thing that we see is His plot and His power, and then we talked about presence, that God is involved in His creation, right?
Yeah.
He's not, and that's what you alluded to a minute ago, He's not distant. He came and He spent time with Adam and Eve, and we even sing the church song, and He walks with me,
Right.
and He talks with me. Now that's poetic, right?
Yeah.
God no longer does that in that way. Now He speaks through His Son. So that might be a good segue
Yeah.
into your PM sermon.
Well, yeah, and one of the passages that I used in that PM sermon had to do with Hebrews chapter 1 and verses 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
And that was a beautiful passage. I tried to make it really simple in that PM sermon. I wanted to talk about something in John 1, something in Hebrews chapter 1, and something in Colossians chapter 1. And that sermon dealt with Christ being in creation. And all of those passages, Hebrews 1, 3 particularly, John 1, 1, 2, and 3, and Colossians chapter 1 and verses 16 and 17 talked about Christ being in creation. We can say Jesus being in creation, and certainly, we understand that He was the agent, He was the cause, He was the one behind that creation that came about. And I enjoyed doing that sermon. I thought that was a good sermon that went really well with what you had to say in your morning sermon. I think one thing I'd bring out about your morning sermon that I really appreciated you spending some time on is that you talked about, and the evening and the morning were that particular day, talking about how long the length of those days were, because there's a lot of theories out there that say, well, one day's with the Lord is 1,000 years, 1,000 years is one day. He could have made that 1,000 years, but He didn't make that 1,000 years. You brought some really good points out in that lesson.
Well, actually, this Sunday we're diving into days and kinds, right?
Okay.
Going to talk about days and kinds.
Right.
I'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of what was created on each day. Probably talk a little bit more about that Hebrew word yom, right? That means day in the text in Genesis 1.
Right.
And the way that we know that it means day in Genesis chapter 1, a literal 24-hour day, is because the context mandates that means day, and the evening and the morning were the first day, or yom.
Yeah.
And you have that after each item of creation.
Right.
All right, let's go to, I want to talk about John chapter 1 real quick. And if you will, just make a couple points from the text from John chapter 1, right? What's the first thing we see in John 1:1 that brings our mind back to Genesis chapter 1?
In the beginning.
In the beginning. And so it's always interesting to me that our mind probably goes back to Genesis chapter 1 when we read John 1:1.
Right.
and it says in the beginning. He's bringing our mind back to an event, the creation event.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he places Jesus at the scene of creation.
And there's another passage that I didn't include in that. That's found over in Revelation chapter 3
Yeah.
and verse 14, where it also talks about in the beginning. So we're talking about in the beginning of creation, in the beginning of time. Jesus was there. He was not a created being. He was involved in the creation himself. And as not being a created being, he was the firstborn of God, but in the sense that it was a privilege. It was in order of rank, in order of priority, in order of preeminence. All those words there. Use those PPP words. I'm pulling one of your tricks out of the hat here.
Yeah, that's
you
fine.
like to do that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, yeah, he was supreme. He wasn't a created being. He was overall in the creation.
Yeah. So you had 3 points in your lesson too on Sunday, right? I had the 3 P's. The plot or the purpose, the power, and the presence.
Yeah.
And go over, you had 3 S's.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I did. I had 3 S's in mind. Christ. I look back and I think about that. Christ in...
as the source.
As source, yeah. Christ as the source of creation. And then I mentioned Christ as the sustainer of creation, and that's out of Colossians chapter 1, verses 16 and 17.
Yeah.
And then I used in my last point there that Christ as the Savior of creation. So Christ in creation as Savior, and we looked at some passages in regard to that.
Yeah.
I thought they went together really well.
Yeah, they went they went together well, and one of the places you went was Romans chapter 8.
Yeah.
And we understand that at the time of that sin in Genesis chapter 3, and especially during and after the flood, the creation suffered greatly because sin was brought in.
Yeah, Paul said in Romans 8 there's a bondage of decay there, a bondage of corruption there as a result of that. And even creation itself is eagerly waiting for the redemption of our body as we are. So that's an interesting context, I think, Romans 8.
And even... And kind of bouncing back to my lesson, I talked a little bit about physics, right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and so you have time, you have a force, you have an agent, you have space, you have matter. Mm-hmm. But going back to your point of this earth decaying, even when we look at modern physics today, right? Modern physics demonstrates that there is decay.
Yeah.
That all things are just in the same way that they had a beginning. All things are coming to an end.
Right. They say it's running down. It's kind of maybe the way they would describe that. It's, the earth is running down. And it is. I mean, hey, listen, someday this earth is going to be done away with. 2 Peter chapter 3, when you go over there and you look at that.
That's
passage.
right.
So.
But anyway, we wanted to share with you just kind of what we talked about Sunday. I think we had 2 good lessons. As we work on the AM and PM, we're trying to work those together. And like I said, Dad won't be here this Sunday. They're going to be on vacation, and I'll do both of the lessons talking about days and kinds in the AM, and then in the PM we're going to talk about the value of the day. But we hope you come and join us, that you be a part of this study. Again, if you'd like a correspondence course, or if you would like a Bible, reach out to us at maldenchristians@gmail.com, and we will be grateful to send those to you.
We'd love to have you with us. Come and see us.
God bless.